Hey there YouTube, it's Zach with Clash of Comics, where all panels are created equal. Thanks for coming out again today for our next video. This one's going to be about Izuku Midoriya. I've been really hyped to talk about him because this whole arc of My Hero Academia has been some of the best manga I've read in a long time, and I'm really excited for the direction that Horikoshi's taking him in. So I kind of noticed some tropes that Deku has written into his character that made me interested in maybe looking deeper into what's happened in My Hero Academia and see how it maybe relates to what's happened in American and Western comics, and I thought maybe I would find some patterns, and I think I did, and that's what this video is going to be about. I hope you guys really enjoy it. This is going to be something I put a lot of work into. Wrote a dissertation. I'm hoping this video is pretty long for you guys, but yeah, hope you guys are excited. Let's get into it. So, a legacy character. So I'm going to talk about first just what a legacy character is and maybe some examples of it. So basically what a legacy character is, it's a character that took a name or title from an older character and then continues their legacy as that character or that name. For example, the easiest example I think would be the Flash. Wally West, after Barry died during Crisis on Infinite Earths, he took over that position as the Flash. He was originally the Kid Flash and was just a sidekick. He was gifted with the same speed powers, just a little less control, but he had to learn strategy from Barry and how to approach combat situations, and he had to step up and be the new guy, even though he was younger than everybody else in the Justice League. And with that came feelings of self-doubt and things that normally legacy characters do feel because they're taking over a mantle. It's usually a character that's so polarizing, like Barry Allen as the Flash was the Flash. He wasn't the first Flash, but he was known as the strongest Flash, the best Flash. And for Wally to overcome that, it took hundreds of chapters and hundreds of issues for him to get to the point where he could really feel in his own skin as the Flash. And it honestly took Professor Zoom coming back and pretending to be Barry and Wally defeating him and feeling that he deserved that position. And it's a big part of Wally's character, and it's one of the things I love so much about him. And I think it's something I do like for Midoriya as well, because the way his character is written as a legacy character is a little different. They didn't have all this history with All Might to build up with, so we just came into it, and in the first couple chapters, they already build up the idea of All Might being the symbol of peace. And it says he's a man who lives up to his name as a symbol of peace. This sets up the legend that Deku has to live up to, starting all the way back in chapter 2. And then through All Might's fights going forward, when you see him fight the Nomu, when you see him fight All for One, all those fights going into that shows you how much of a polarizing figure All Might actually is. And for Deku to be so young and without control of the quirk that he's been gifted by All Might, it really does put a lot of stress, I think, on young Deku, because it's hard for him to imagine him getting to that point, but he has to keep pushing and pushing. And I think for about 100 chapters, it's a lot of struggles for Deku. And then once All Might loses the rest of his powers and the embers of One for All go out, then I think Deku took a lot of responsibility on his head. And after that fight, All Might pointed to the camera, almost saying, "Your turn," and Deku understood what it meant, and Bakugo did as well, but no one else really did. And it was such a huge blow to the Hero Society to lose All Might, and for Deku to have all that weight on his shoulders is so much for a 16-year-old to bear. And it even takes like All Might having to go to his mom and take responsibility for the fact that he took Deku's admiration for granted, and the fact that he was lax in teaching him because of that. And it was a huge moment for All Might's character, and I think it put a lot of the confidence Deku needed into himself for him to move forward. And this is something that a lot happened in Flash as well with Wally West. Wally West always had Jay Garrick there to help him, and Jay Garrick is kind of like the glue that holds that Flash family together. He's the one that can really give that speech to get them to understand what's going on, to see what they have to move forward. For example, Wally West, when he was trying to be faster, he was asking all the members of the Flash family for advice, and none of them could really teach him anything because he was already as fast as them or faster. And Max Mercury points out that, "I think you just are scared of becoming faster than Barry Allen," and that was a huge mental block for him. Deku had a somewhat similar situation when he was coming up with his ultimate move, and they had pointed out to Deku that you need to stop being like All Might. You need to become your own hero and use your own style and be your own person. And when he did that and he came up with shoot style, it really changed the game for Deku. It gave him a lot of confidence and made him feel like, I'm Deku, I'm the new symbol of peace, and I can be the guy that I need to be. And Hori really tied into that aspect as a legacy character really well, and I think it really made Deku's arc as a whole just more interesting. Now what I'm going to talk about next is the young man among men trope. Now this trope, it's prevalent in superhero comics, but it is something I think also just comes with coming of age tales or any story that tells a story from a kid's point of view growing up to become an adult. And I think it's really represented in characters like Peter Parker. Peter Parker was a kid who was just gifted with powers. He didn't quite understand how to use them, but had to learn them while going through life and having school and having to be able to balance regular life and his hero life. Peter Parker's struggle and Deku's struggle as far as their life and being a hero while being around other heroes that are a lot older and more experienced. And that's highlighted, I think, during the arc where he joins Night Eye's agency and he gets Mirio in the top 3, and he learns about all these characters and how strong they are as a hero. And throughout the arc, he proves that he is the one that deserved One for All instead of Mirio. And Mirio being presented as a character who could have been the MC, who could have had the quirk that Deku has, and maybe he would have been better, maybe he wouldn't have. But they tell you in the beginning, and it ties into Hori's themes of talking about how the world is not created equal. Not everybody gets the same fair shot as everybody else. And Deku at first felt like he didn't get that and ended up getting One for All, and now look at him. And I think just the way that Mirio talks about his backstory as well, and how he had to work to be able to control his quirk. No matter how strong he is now, it really took a lot of time and effort to be able to get there, to be able to be strong enough to use that quirk effectively. And I think at the end of the arc, after they beat Overhaul, there was a moment when Deku came and offered his quirk to Mirio because he had lost it. And the arc, it's very important to Deku's character, because in that moment, he not only did Mirio decline it, but he told Deku, he said, "You are great, Deku the hero," and said his hero name as if he was already that guy. And I think that really struck a chord with him, and it helped Deku get that confidence to move forward after that arc. And that, as far as like him growing up and becoming the hero he needs to be, I think it's a huge influence I think he takes from Peter Parker, and a lot of the emotional range and the maturity level is the same, so it makes sense for his character to be similar to Peter in a lot of ways. I also think when he fights, he's a lot like Peter, the way he pulls up and can analyze situations, make quick decisions, and his personality is a little different obviously, but he's definitely, I think, influenced by him, and especially in his fighting style. Now the last trope I'm going to talk about is going to be called the Dark Path. And so now in the story, Deku has moved on and he has the confidence he needs to become the symbol of peace. He's accepted his role and he's nearly strong enough to fill it. And then it's time for his real first altercation with Shigaraki, the one who holds All for One. And he's pretty much been set up to be Deku's arch nemesis. I don't see anyone else who could possibly be. And that's a grueling battle. Deku really puts everything out there trying to beat Shigaraki, and he's pushed to his absolute limit. And then Bakugo ends up being impaled. And when that happens, it seems that's when Deku really went over the edge for the first time. And he had a different type of rage that we've never seen Deku have before. And he ends up being in that pocket dimension with Shigaraki and All for One, and he sees Shigaraki break. And even after having that rage, he said he looked like he needed saving, and it showed Deku's commitment to his ideals and what he believes as a hero in general. And after the war, he has a meeting with the previous holders of One for All, and they basically give him the full lowdown on his quirk and how it works, and tell him almost everything that he needs to know to be able to use it. And they only give him this opportunity because of Deku's ideals and the path that he chooses to take going forward. he accepts the fact that he may have to kill Shigaraki, but he wants to save him if he can. And he says, "One for all is a power of saving, not killing. All Might taught me that." And it seems like that's really a big aspect to Deku's character. So now when you move into the current arc that we're in right now, where Deku's basically gone rogue and is hunting the League of Villains, he is out there with All Might, Hawks, Best Jeanist, Endeavor, now Mount Lady, and Kamui Woods, and some more characters. And it seems that All for One has a way of tracking him, and he has to basically alienate himself from his classmates, from his mother, from an All Might at this point, and it's very hard for him, I'm sure. And it seems he looks very tired, like he's really had gone through the ringer. And I think that really comes to a head in the most recent chapter, when he basically fell right into a trap that All for One set, and decides the best course of action is just to go face him, even though he doesn't really think of the consequences. It ends up getting him back later when they do show up and the whole place explodes. And that's a fault of Deku and just a failure that he had. And that had Deku having to take responsibility for that and realizing that he may have to do this all on his own. And I think a similar character to that is going to be Bruce Wayne, and the character arc that he goes through with being Batman, because he's in a very similar situation where he could very easily kill people if he really chose to, but he doesn't ever do that, because he feels like if he does that, that's when he goes over the edge and he becomes like the villains as opposed to being the hero. And that's important to Bruce Wayne's ego and his purpose as Batman. And I think Horikoshi rather is putting Deku through a similar type character arc, where he's gonna get to a point where he's gonna have to make a decision, and whether he's gonna go over the edge or he's gonna hold to his ideals, and if he's gonna find a way to do both. And it's gonna be hard, and he may lose people, I'm not sure. I'm interested to see how the direction goes. All for One's turning out to be a way better villain than we ever thought he was gonna be, so I'm really excited about that. But I'm really excited for what he's doing with Deku's character, because it seems that he's now culminating all these different tropes into one hero, making a character who could go through multiple character arcs throughout the series, only adding more depth to his character. And I truly believe Deku is the greatest Eastern superhero. I don't think there's any better. Some people would probably argue Saitama, but for me, he's not as good as Deku, but it's perfectly fine if you do believe that. But me personally, he is the greatest Eastern superhero. He really has one of the best power sets I've ever seen in any character, and the way he uses them is just so dynamic and interesting. And then you take into account the way he approaches life, and being a hero in general is just so inspiring. And I like Deku a lot, and I'm really excited for the future. But that's gonna go ahead and wrap up this video. Thank you guys for coming out so much, I appreciate it. This is gonna be Clash of Comics, where all panels are created equal. Zach, hope you guys have a great day. Like and subscribe, and then follow me on Twitter, Wally's R34, and then the Discord's in the description. Thanks guys, have a good one.